Trick or Treat is a Halloween horror film that's written and directed by Matthew Doherty that came out in 2007. So Trick or Treat is a $50 patron request. It comes from Brandon Smith, and I'm incredibly grateful that he requested this film because this is a film that I have seen already, but it's been a very long time since I've seen it. I think it's been at least 4 or 5 years now since I've seen it. And I actually have talked about this film at one point on this channel. Back when I first started this channel, I came out with this Halloween special, and I had a segment where I talked about Trick or Treat with my cousin Eric, because this was his movie of choice to talk about. You can't find it on the channel anymore because I learned that YouTube basically blocked that film from... I mean, they basically banned it, and I'm pretty sure it's for obvious copyright reasons. I don't really know exactly what it was for, but you can't access that video anymore. And honestly, that's probably for the best because I was such a cringe lord back then, and I'm still a cringe lord now, but I think it was through the roof back then, and I don't think any of you guys deserve that. But anyway, Trick or Treat was a film that I remember having lots of fun with when I first watched it, but I was curious to see if my thoughts would evolve or if I would just in general think differently about this film after so many years. And I have to say, after rewatching Trick or Treat, this is still a very entertaining and fun Halloween film that just perfectly encapsulates that Halloween vibe. This really is a great spooky season film for adults. This is like the adult Halloween film that I can see a lot of people really liking. I heard that it got lots of buzz at film festivals when this film was first released, and I heard that it basically also kind of got done wrong with Warner Bros. And they scrapped any kind of theatrical release for this film and eventually just gave it a straight to DVD release, which is, kind of a shame because I feel like if this got a proper theatrical release, I feel like it would have done pretty well. I guess the only thing that's kind of holding it back is its R rating, because this does contain sexuality, it does contain some gore and violence. But overall, I think this would have made its money back. But yes, I thought that this was a fun and entertaining film. And what's so interesting about this film is that, in one way, this film doesn't take itself seriously at all, but in another way, it does. Let me explain. So when it comes to how this film is directed, and in terms of its overall presentation, I do think it takes itself seriously. Because of the way that this film captures the Halloween aesthetic, you can tell that it comes from a deep, passionate love of the holiday. And that's one thing that I really like about this film. There's this one sequence that has to do with a school bus, and the way that sequence was directed, I think you could tell that there was a lot of care put into it. And overall, this film kind of has a sense of creative direction. And I think that's the thing that I actually like the most about this film, is that I can tell that the person behind the camera really does care about the way he's capturing not only the holiday, but horror as well. Because this film basically tries to cover a lot of different horror bases. Because you have this dark comedy element that's led by the actor Dylan Baker. Which, by the way, he's incredible. I love that actor. Most people know him from Happiness. And he again goes for this kind of twisted type of, just repulsive type of character. But the way that his character is written, the way that he delivers his lines through this character and embodies it, just works so well, and it's just hilarious, and I had so much fun with it. And I love how unafraid this film is to get really dark. And that's especially with, again, that introductory comedic sequence with Dylan Baker's character. And I thought that was captured incredibly well. And honestly, that was the moment where I realized I was probably going to have a lot of fun with this movie. Because, to be honest, I really wasn't into, the first horror sequence of this film, the actual introduction to this film. And it's just because it was, really run-of-the-mill and generic. And I understand that, that was more than likely the point, because this film is basically homages to different genres of horror. And the introductory horror sequence is basically your basic slasher. And it really didn't do much for me. But once we get that dark comedy segment with Dylan Baker's character, I was like, yeah, this is This is really cool. I like this a lot. And then we have another sequence that's revolving around Anna Paquin's character. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. It could be Paquin, but I think it's Paquin. Most people know her from the X-Men movies, but she's in this film and she kind of has her own story. And I like it. I in terms of just what that story results in and what that builds up to, I like it in terms of its concept, but for me, some of the execution just didn't do it for me. Especially when like the climax of that story occurs. There's a use of a Marilyn Manson song, and this didn't really do it for me. I thought it squandered a little bit of what could have been with that sequence, but I can understand that, you know, it could work for some people because it is just trying to be like this edgy, fun Halloween movie. But one thing that I forgot to mention about this film is that it is, I don't want to really call it an anthology, even though a lot of people do call it an anthology because it does contain 4 different sequences of 4 different narrative stories, like short narratives. But usually when I think of anthologies, like they're completely separate from each other. This one ties in all these short stories and little, you know, clever ways. And I did appreciate that out of the film. Like, I don't think it was genius or anything how they tied everything together, but I liked its creative attempts and I admired them. And there are moments where when you see how certain things are connected and how certain stories kind of collide for a second, it was really interesting to see that unfold on screen. But there is another short story that revolves around these middle school characters, and that sequence worked fairly well for the most part. I think my favorite aspect of it is just the conclusion of it. It felt not only satisfying, but it felt like there was a lot of effort thrown into the writing, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it can speak to a lot of people that, you know, felt really outcast and bullied in their life. Then you get the last short story sequence that revolves around Brian Cox's character, who, by the way, is a wonderful actor. And again, like, with all these well-known actors and actresses, you would think that it would get a theatrical release, but unfortunately it didn't. But yeah, we get that last act of the film, and it could arguably be the best act in the film. And that's only because I think the film does a great job at kind of combining slasher horror with paranormal horror. And it's when we finally get to see the iconic character that's established in this film named Sam. And it's basically the character that you see on the cover with a sack over its head. And not only do I like the character design of this character, but I kind of like what the character represents and what it embodies. Because to me, I think this character is supposed to be the spirit of Halloween, or the personification of Halloween. And not only do I think that's a really neat idea, but just the way that they incorporate it into the film in that last act, I think is really interesting. And the way that he kind of goes in and out of the entire film, I think is really well written and really well incorporated, because we get like a flashback sequence to a different time, and you see for a quick second Sam still there as well. And I think that's a really neat touch of the film, because again, it kind of reinforces that idea that, you know, this is something that is beyond human. This is something that is of the supernatural. And again, kind of expressing the notion that the spirit of Halloween is always there, no matter what era you're in. But yeah, again, I think that last short story that's presented in this film is really effective. And again, the way that they incorporate that iconic character is really well done. But I will have to say, in terms of that last short story, is that there's a reveal that it's really predictable, and it presents it in a way that makes you, it tries to be like this aha moment where it thinks that it was being like, you know, really clever and ambiguous with this reveal, when in reality it was set up in a really predictable way. And it's mostly because of just how the dialogue is written in previous stories. In the kid's story, you have 2 things that are reinforced through dialogue, where it's just like, it just makes it so obvious that this is going to have a payoff later. And then when you start thinking about all the characters that are in the movie, it's so easy to put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, obviously, I had a lot of fun with this movie, even though, you know, I do have a handful of issues with it. It's still a good time, and it's a film that I think any adult should watch in order to really get themselves into the Halloween spirit. And I think this is like the movie to watch. I mean, obviously there's plenty of other films, but I think this film kind of captured the atmosphere and the spirit of Halloween quite well. So I'll give Trick or Treat a soft 7 out of 10. Yeah, I think there's a good chance that a lot of you have seen this film already. So if you have, please comment below and tell me what your thoughts are on it. But if you really enjoy what I had to say about Trick or Treat, please give this video a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.